My name is Jim Ostrowski, and I work with EGLE's Environmental Support Division. Welcome you to tonight's meeting on the Gelman Consent Judgment Update. We got a few people still joining us, kind of popping in here I can see in terms of attendees, so I'm just going to spend the first few minutes going over some basic housekeeping guidelines before we get into our first presentation here. So a couple housekeeping guidelines. I don't know how many of you have been on a virtual hearing or meeting before, but for those of you who have not, it is a little bit different for many of you, something new, I know. First of all lines are muted at this point, which means that you can hear us, but we can't hear you. And we are recording this meeting, so it's being recorded now, and we will share that after the meeting. Tonight, basically the agenda is pretty simple. We're going to start out with a couple people presenting from EGLE, and then really we're just going to open it up to you to ask your questions or comments. A couple important things about that is that this is a little different than most public meetings and hearings in that you can type in your question or your comment, or you can click the raise hand icon and we will call on you to make your question or comment. The big difference with this meeting, though, is that we will not be responding back to you. So you might ask a question or make a comment, but we're not going to be responding back to you during this meeting. It's for an official comment or question for the record, okay? And I'll make sure I remind you of that, too. And you will all have a limited amount of time to make your comment or question, 3 minutes. I'll remind you of that when we get to that point after our presentations. I am looking at our attendee list. Doesn't look like we have anybody on the phone, but if perchance there is somebody at some point, if you are calling in by phone only, you click on the *9 button, and that it shows us that your hand is raised, and we'll call on you to make your question or comment. So it looks like we've got most people that are going to join us are coming on. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Neller, who is a division director from Remediation and Redevelopment Division. So Mike, go ahead.
Thanks, Jim. Good evening. As Jim said, my name is Mike Neller, and I'm the director of the Remediation and Redevelopment Division in Michigan's Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, or EGLE. Tonight, we're going to present information on the Fourth Amended and Restated Consent Judgment for Gelman, and then offer the official comment period. The Fourth Amended and Restated Consent Judgment comprehensively addresses the Gelman groundwater contamination and provides multiple layers of protection, putting into place safeguards that make the remedy more protective of human health and the environment. EGLE began negotiations to update the consent judgment in March of 2016 due to the anticipated reduction of the groundwater residential drinking water cleanup criteria for 1,4-dioxane to 7.2 parts per billion from 85 parts per billion. It is worth noting that EGLE and Gelman have in practice implemented the 7.2 parts per billion drinking water criteria since the time it was promulgated as an emergency rule in October of 2016. The Fourth Amended Consent Judgment also implements the more restrictive criterion of 280 parts per billion, down from 2,800 parts per billion for groundwater venting into surface water. The resulting expansion of the Prohibition Zone was necessary because the extent of the plume is now defined by the more restrictive 7.2 parts per billion criterion. Importantly, the expanded Prohibition Zone only affects areas already served by municipal water, ensuring that the daily lives of homeowners and residents in the expanded area and their drinking water won't be affected. The existing extension monitoring well network will be expanded by installing up to 36 new monitoring wells in 14 key locations to delineate the location of the newly defined plume boundaries based on the 7.2 part per billion criterion. The Fourth Amendment consent judgment also establishes an early warning contingency planning trigger process so that EGLE and Gelman can take prompt action to prevent the western area plume from expanding and the eastern area plume from migrating beyond the Prohibition Zone boundaries. The Fourth Amendment consent judgment increases the amount of pump and treat groundwater remediation to further reduce contaminant masses and groundwater concentrations, which the community has sought. The extraction rate will approximately double in the Prohibition Zone. Phytoremediation and additional extraction well will be used in the Gelman property for additional source control. While EGLE acknowledges that the Fourth Amendment consent judgment will not please some members of the community, we do believe that the consent judgment advances the continued protection of human health and the environment from the Gelman plume. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dan Hamel, who works for EGLE and RRD, and will provide some of the specifics on the consent judgment.
Thank you, Mike. Let me get to where I can share my screen for some figures.
Okay, looks good, Dan.
To reiterate, the Gelman consent judgment, or CJ, was recently updated to reflect and incorporate the revised 1,4-dioxane cleanup criteria. In addition to the criteria being updated, other changes were made to the CJ that put even more safeguards into place to protect human health and the environment. Some of the additional safeguards include increasing the number of groundwater extraction wells, increasing the number of Sentinel, Prohibition Zone, and compliance monitoring wells, increasing source removal efforts on the Gelman property, and implementing a contingency plan that includes extension of municipal water to 4 areas that rely on wells for drinking water if it is determined to be needed. We will go over all these additional safeguards tonight with maps to give you an idea of what is happening and where. The CJ response action requirements are divided into 3 geographical areas on the Gelman property separated by Wagner Road. The eastern area of the site is located east of Wagner Road, including the area encompassed by the Prohibition Zone. The western area of the site is located west of Wagner Road. The third area is the Gelman property, which is west of Wagner Road and includes the property currently owned by Gelman and properties formerly owned by Gelman, currently owned by others. The new criteria identified in the CJ apply to all 3 geographical areas. In summary, the groundwater used as residential drinking water criterion was reduced from 85 micrograms per liter, or parts per billion, to 7.2 parts per billion. The groundwater venting to surface water, the GSI criterion, was reduced from 2,800 parts per billion to 280 parts per billion. In addition to making sure that the drinking water in the area is protected, Gelman is obligated to prevent 1,4-dioxane from venting into surface waters in both the eastern and western areas at concentrations above the new GSI criterion of 280 parts per billion, except in compliance with Part 201 regulations. Relevant surface waters protected by this requirement include the unnamed tributary of Honey Creek, flowing west from the Gelman property, Honey Creek, and the Huron River. On the Gelman property, the company will conduct additional remediation activities to control areas where existing 1,4-dioxane contamination is a continuing source to the groundwater contamination migrating from the property. The additional remediation activities include installation of 3 additional groundwater extraction wells in areas north, northeast, and east of Third Sister Lake. These new extraction wells will be pumped at a combined pumping rate of 75 gallons per minute, which will enhance and accelerate removal of 1,4-dioxane from the shallow groundwater on the property. Based on the performance achieved from these initial extraction wells, up to 3 additional extraction wells may be installed to also accelerate 1,4-dioxane removal. Potential additional extraction well locations include areas north and east of the marshy area, and west of the Gelman Treatment Building. Phytoremediation of 1,4-dioxane contamination will be conducted in the former Pond 1 and 2 area and the marshy area. Phytoremediation is the treatment of pollutants in soil or groundwater using plants or trees that remove, degrade, or stabilize the pollutant. Gelman shall install and maintain trees in the treatment areas to reduce 1,4-dioxane contamination in soils and shallow groundwater. A heated soil vapor extraction system, or HSVE system, will be installed and operated in the former burn pit area on the property. After the operation of the HSVE system is complete, Gelman will install and maintain an impervious barrier, or cap, over the HSVE treatment area to inhibit water from percolating through the soils in this area. Gelman will also install and maintain a cap over an adjacent portion of the former burn pit area. The eastern area is a Prohibition Zone, or PZ, containment area. The Prohibition Zone is an institutional control implemented to prevent use of contaminated groundwater, regardless of the depth of the groundwater or aquifer designation, in a selected area. The current CJ has a specific PZ area identified. The new CJ identifies a Prohibition Zone expansion. The areas highlighted in green identify the expanded areas of the PZ. Because of the change in criteria from 85 parts per billion to 7.2 parts per billion, both the north and south boundaries of the PZ were adjusted to account for this change. Although the physical extent of the plume has not spread outside the current PZ to the north or south at a concentration greater than 85 parts per billion, the criteria identified in the current CJ, the boundaries were adjusted because a lower concentration now defines the areas that must utilize municipal water. The Prohibition Zone expansion will not require any new properties to be connected to municipal water because all properties within the expansion areas already use municipal water. The CJ is designed to be protective in a tiered approach. Sentinel wells detect the movement of 1,4-dioxane toward PZ boundary wells, and PZ boundary wells detect movement of 1,4-dioxane near the PZ boundary. An additional safeguard was included in the CJ to ensure that any potential migration of contaminated groundwater outside the Prohibition Zone above 7.2 parts per billion is detected before that migration occurs. If there is a detection of 4.6 parts per billion or greater in any PZ boundary well, the frequency of sampling that well increases from quarterly to monthly. Exceedances of 4.6 parts per billion from the same PZ boundary well in 3 consecutive months triggers a verification process, which includes sampling private drinking water wells in the immediate vicinity of the PZ boundary well and evaluating the need for active remediation to control the plume. In addition, the potential hookup to a municipal water supply will be evaluated. Every 5 years, the PZ boundary will be reviewed to determine whether it may be safely decreased in size while still maintaining a sufficient buffer to the PZ boundary objectives. The CJ identifies additional extraction well installation in the eastern area. Gelman shall install up to 3 new extraction wells. The general locations are identified on the CJ attachment G figure as the Rose Well remediation area and the Park Lake Well remediation area. The third potential location would be the IDW injection well area, which is located immediately east of the Rosewell remediation area. The Rosewell IDW2 area is located between Rose Street and Pinewood Street. In this area, a new Rosewell will be installed, or the former IDW injection well will be converted to an extraction well. Both a new well installation and conversion of the existing IDW2 well may be completed if site-specific conditions warrant. Contaminated groundwater from the Rosewell remediation area will be added to the current groundwater from the Evergreen extraction wells and the Maple Road extraction wells for a collective extraction rate of approximately 200 gallons per minute. The combined groundwater from these locations will be pumped through the existing pipeline system to the Gelman facility on Wagner Road and treated using the existing ozone hydrogen peroxide treatment system. The Park Lake well area is located between Jackson Road and Lakeview Drive along Park Lake Avenue. In this area, a new extraction well will be installed. The estimated extraction rate for this well will be approximately 200 gallons per minute. Contaminated groundwater from this well will be treated with a portable ozone hydrogen peroxide treatment system and discharged to First Sister Lake under an NPDES permit. The CJ also identifies additional monitoring well installation activities in the eastern area. Gelman shall install new monitoring wells at strategic locations. At each new location, 1 to 3 wells will be installed at different depths to continue the investigation and evaluation of groundwater contamination. Monitoring wells identified as sentinel wells in the CJ will be installed at 3 locations south of the new northern PZ boundary. The general locations include areas identified as Location A, the area near the intersection of Ravenwood and Barber Avenue. Location B, the area near Sequoia Parkway and Archwood Drive. And location C, the area near Maple Road and North Circle Drive. The installation and sampling of sentinel wells in these areas will also provide additional information for the ongoing evaluation of stakeholder concerns about contaminated groundwater movement towards Barton Pond. Also, verified sentinel well exceedances of 7.2 parts per billion would result in installation of additional PZ boundary wells near the northern PZ boundary. Monitoring wells identified as PZ boundary wells in the CJ will be installed at 2 locations near the southern PZ boundary. The general locations include the areas identified as Location D, the vacant area east of South Wagner Road, north of Liberty Road, west of Lakeview Avenue, and south of Second Sister Lake. Location E is the residential, the well at Location E will be installed in the residential area near the south end of Ridgemore Drive. To maintain compliance, to maintain with the Prohibition Zone containment objective, and to ensure compliance with the groundwater surface water interface objective identified in the CJ, a downgrading investigation will be conducted in the eastern area. Additional monitor wells will be installed at 3 locations near West Park. The general locations include the areas identified as Location F, the area near the intersection of West Washington and South 7th Street. Location G, the area near the intersection of West Huron Street and Urbana Drive. And location H, the area near the intersection of Briarwood Street and Linwood Avenue. The installation and sampling of these downgraded monitoring wells will provide additional information for the ongoing evaluation of stakeholder concerns about contaminated shallow groundwater and wet basements in the West Park area of Ann Arbor. The CJ also requires Gelman to prepare a contingency plan in advance that identifies the requirements and needed preparation to extend municipal water along Calvin Street on the north side of the PZ and in the area of Wagner Road and Lakeview Avenue on the south side of the PZ. The contingency plan will be implemented if remediation activities are not able to prevent the expansion of the groundwater contamination plume. The western area is a non-expansion objective area. Gelman shall install new monitoring wells at strategic locations to further investigate the horizontal and vertical extent of groundwater contamination in relationship to the new revised 1,4-dioxane drinking water criteria of 7.2 parts per billion. At each new location, 1 to 3 wells will be installed at different depths to continue the investigation and evaluation of groundwater contamination. To maintain compliance with the non-expansion objective, Gelman will conduct a delineation investigation. For the delineation investigation, wells will be installed at 6 locations across the western area. The general locations include areas identified as Location I. A deep well will be installed near existing monitoring wells MW40 S&D between Jackson Road and I-94. Location J, the commercial area between Jackson Road and I-94 east of the MW40 wells. Location K, the residential area west of West Delhi Road between Jackson Road and I-94. Location L, the residential area southwest of the existing MW141 wells near the intersection of Colcaney Court and Birkdale Drive. Location M, a shallow well will be installed on Myrtle Avenue between Jackson Road and Park Road. And location N, the residential and vacant land area within 250 feet of Honey Creek west southwest of the intersection of Dexter Road and West Delhi Road. Data and information from all monitoring wells in the western area, including the new delineation wells, will be evaluated and used to identify the network of compliance monitoring wells that will be used to confirm compliance with a western area non-expansion cleanup objective identified in the CJ. Gelman will also complete a groundwater surface water interface investigation in the western area to evaluate if groundwater is venting to surface water at a concentration greater than the 280 parts per billion GSI criterion. Gelman will submit a GSI work plan for review and approval. Investigation areas will include, at a minimum, the unnamed tributary of Honey Creek, the marshy area through which the unnamed tributary flows, and areas of Honey Creek where the unnamed tributary enters. Response activities authorized by the Part 201 regulations will be implemented to address any exceedances of GSI criterion. The CJ also requires Gelman to prepare a contingency plan, in advance that identifies the requirements and needed preparation to extend municipal water along Elizabeth Road. The contingency plan will be implemented if remediation activities are not able to prevent the expansion of the groundwater contamination plume. This completes the overview of the remediation and response activities identified in the modified CJ. I will ask Jim Ostrowski to take over and review the procedures for the public comments section of tonight's meeting.
All right, Thanks, Dan. I'm going to bring my screen back up here. All right. And we'll go through a few things. All right, so thanks, Dan. Again, several of you joined us a little bit late. My name is Jim Ostrowski. I'm the moderator for tonight's meeting. And Dan Hamel just gave a presentation. At this point, what we do now is we're going to take official comment, and I just got a few things I need to go through, explain how this works, because it might be a little different than what you're used to in terms of a public comment. Up on the screen you have in front of you right now the various ways that you can submit comment, one of them being during tonight's public meeting. Of course, that's not the only way. A lot of you might realize you want to submit a comment later, or maybe you don't want to do it at tonight's meeting. That's fine. You can submit it via email, and I do see there's a few people that joined us by phone, so I will read off the email address, and I'll do it again at the end. The email is EGLE RRD GELMAN @michigan.gov. So that is the that's the email address you can submit comments to, and by U.S. mail you can send it to Dan Hamel, it's HAMEL, RRD Project Manager, Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes and Energy, Jackson District Office, 301 East Lewis Glick Highway, Jackson, Michigan, 49201-1556. I'll repeat that again for those of you that might not have gotten it, especially those on the phone. And public comments collected through until December 21st, 2020. All right, so how to make comment tonight or ask a question. Again, the weird thing about tonight is that if you do submit a question, we are not responding to those questions tonight. So it's just part of the official record. So what you're going to be doing is submitting your comment or question to us for our record. And there's a couple different ways you can do that tonight. The first is if you want to use that question box on your toolbar, you can type your comment in there, and that'll be part of the record. That's fine. We will not be reading those though, but it will be part of the record. You can also click the raise hand icon, and when you do that, we will call on you, and we will unmute your microphone. Hopefully it works, and then you can make your comment. And you'll be given 3 minutes to do that, just because we want to make sure we give everybody adequate time to make their comment. So you'll be each given 3 minutes, and I'll be keeping track of time here. And when you have 1 minute left, I will let you know. And when your time's up, I'll let you know. And I ask that when I say time's up, that you wrap it up immediately, just to allow everybody else time to make their comments as well. For those of you who are calling in on the phone, if you'd like to make a comment, what you do is you press *9. When you press *9, it shows us that your hand is raised, and I will call on you by your phone number because I can't see your name. So I'll give you the last 4 digits of your phone number to call on you. And that's how you'll see that. All right, so I'm just going to make a couple adjustments here, and it looks like a few people have got their hand raised. That's good to see. And we've got a few people who have typed in some questions in our question box, which is good to see as well. So I am going to, when you make your comment, if you would, when we call on your name, when we unmute you, please say your name because I might mispronounce it. So please say your name. And also, if you're with an organization, please let us know which organization you're representing. So again, when we call on you, say your name and your organization, and I will try to call you in the order in which you raised your hand. So with that, I'm going to call on the first person, and I'm going to turn off my camera right now. All right, so I'm going to call on the first person who's got their hand raised, Dan Bicknell. Dan, your mic's unmuted on our end, so you got to unmute on your end. Dan, are you there?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, go ahead and say your name, any organization you're with, and go ahead and start your comment. You got 3 minutes.
Sure. My name is Dan Bicknell. I'm a Washtenaw County resident and president, Global Environment Alliance. I'm concerned that the proposed Fourth Amendment consent judgment is just a continuation of the current amended consent judgment dilution remedy, which will not stop the dioxane plume from expanding towards Ann Arbor Charter Township wells, Scio Township wells, Barton Hill Village wells, or Barton Pond. The shallow dioxane plume will travel through the city of Ann Arbor unabated, presenting a risk to building occupants from dioxane vapor intrusion or flooded basements, as well as to workers in the trench who are in contact with the polluted shallow groundwater. The consent judgment is really not protective of public health or the environment. As it relates to some of the provisions, the consent judgment says that the prohibition zone objective is to prevent groundwater contamination from migrating beyond the prohibition boundary. However, there's a hidden reference in there that allows Gelman or EGLE to unilaterally expand the prohibition zone with additional data. The CJ also says that Gelman must attain a generic surface water, groundwater, surface water interface of 280. But again, there's a hidden reference instead, which allows Gelman to use a mixing zone-based groundwater, surface water interface value, which is many times greater than the 280 value. Additionally, the CJ has a provision that says a remedial contingency plan must be developed to stop the dioxane from going beyond the prohibition boundary. But it also says that the remedial contingency plan can allow Gelman to expand the prohibition boundary with no action to actually stop the dioxane contamination groundwater expansion. The CJ allows institutional and land use restrictions to be placed on private owner drinking water wells which become contaminated, thereby stopping the use of those wells for any purpose. Overall, the proposed Fourth Amendment consent judgment, use of the prohibition zone expansion provision, the implementation of institutional controls and land use restrictions, and the municipal water contingency plan, they all work together to allow Gelman and EGLE to just expand the prohibition zone, place institutional controls on private landowner drinking water wells, and then provide the homeowner with a municipal water supply. There is no actual requirement in the state consent judgment to have Gelman stop the dioxane groundwater migration that is now away from the former Gelman plant. I do not think that this proposed Fourth Amendment CJ should be approved. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, I'll mute you, Mike, again, and go to the next person that we have, hands raised. And I apologize for mispronouncing your name. Mozgan Savabisiani?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. So again, can you please repeat your name and any organization you're with?
Thank you very much. My name is Mozgan Savabi Esfahani. I am with the planet Earth. How infuriating it is to hear the half-hearted voices of EGLE's speakers. They are acting as if they are the salesmen for Gelman. How shameful. Let me start by thanking Councilmember Hayner, who does not support this new and improved mega break for the polluter, that is Gelman. If this mega favor for Gelman is approved, it will allow dioxane to creep further across our city and contaminate more of our planet. Thanks, Jeff, for demanding a full cleanup, treatment of dioxin to non-detectable levels, and for asking for an ongoing cash set aside to pay for the future single-point water treatment plant cleanup. Ann Arbor City Council must launch an immediate and complete cleanup of the toxic Gelman plume instead of wishing for another 30 years that Gelman or the state or the EPA might do it. They won't. The abysmal conduct of these bodies throughout the generations speaks louder than words. We cannot trust the health of our city, the health of our children, and the health of our planet to degenerate officials who have failed us for decades. the toxic waste dump we live in has been created on their watch. Our degenerate officials have no intention of doing anything about this massive pollution. They have allowed Gelman to call the shots. As Roger Rail pointed out earlier, the refusal of Gelman to release any studies of the contamination which remains at the core site should be enough to reject this Gelman deal. If we genuinely care about the children of this land, about the children of the world, if we care about the health of this ailing planet, which the likes of Gelman have sickened, if we care about survival of life on this earth, if our pledge is to heal this planet, we must clean up this largest dioxin contamination now and stop kicking the can once and for all.
Okay, thank you. And we'll move to our next person that said they wanted to make a comment, the hand raised. Blaine Coleman. Blaine Coleman, again, repeat your name and any organization you're with, please. You're unmuted.
This is Blaine Coleman, and I am not with any organization.
Sir, I think we're getting a little feedback, so if you have two microphones on, or you might want to turn down your volume there. So you can go ahead and...
Can you start the timer again?
Oh, yeah.
All right. My name is Blaine Coleman. I am not with any organization. And I can tell you that when Dr. Mojgan Savabi-Esfahani ran for city council a few months ago, I voted for her. 651 people voted for her, largely because she insisted on an immediate cleanup by the city of Ann Arbor of this Gelman toxic contamination. Now, we in the city are not eager to pay for it, but it's clear that if the city of Ann Arbor does not clean up this toxic dioxane mess itself and foot the bill with a millage, nobody is going to clean it up. Gelman's not going to do anything resembling a complete cleanup. EGLE has also proven that they are not going to do anything resembling a complete cleanup. EPA has told us to our face in a public meeting they are not going to do a cleanup, and it might take them decades even to study whether they might consider doing a cleanup. So it falls to the city. Now, of course, the city of Ann Arbor should sue Gelman and demand reimbursement for the cost of the cleanup. It could run as high as $100 million. But the city has got to do this cleanup itself because no one else will. City officials, as Dr. Savabi-Esfahani mentioned, Ann Arbor city officials have been kicking the can down the road for 30 years. They have refused to take any real responsibility to do a complete cleanup. Likewise with the state, and that goes double and triple for the polluter, Gelman. So the city of Ann Arbor is going to have to do the complete cleanup of this dioxane mess itself. What other choice do we have? We've got to clean this thing up. Now, talking about cleaning it up is very different from cleaning it up. It's got to be completely cleaned up. Mayor Taylor is excited by this deal, apparently. He used the word excited when this rotten deal was announced. We should not be excited about this Gelman deal. It's a raw deal. It's a sucker's deal.
1 minute.
And I'd like to hear what other people have to say about this extremely raw deal. I mean, just consider the fact that you are breaking your arm, patting yourself on the back, that we now have a 7 parts per billion standard for dioxane. New York has a 1 part per billion standard for dioxane. And even 1 part per billion is too high. This thing has to be cleaned up down to non-detectable levels, which is what Council Member Hayner has asked for, and that's what we should all ask for. And no one but the city of Ann Arbor is going to do that kind of cleanup because no one else.
So that's 3
cares.
minutes, so if you would please wrap up.
I'm done, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving down our list of people with their hands raised. Next person I have up here is Vince Caruso. Vince Caruso, your mic is now unmuted.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go
Okay,
ahead.
great. Thanks so much for the opportunity. My name is Vince Caruso, founding and board member for CARD, Coalition for Action Remediation on Dioxin, also founding and coordinating member for the Allens Creek Watershed Group, acwg.org, and I'm a former board member of the Sierra Club Huron Valley Group. I think some of the proposals in the CJ are improvements, but I do not support this proposed CJ. I support an EPA Superfund petition and cleanup, and I'll comment why. I also like to say I support Dan Bicknell's comments that he made tonight. I don't think EGLE or the former DEQ are capable at a town hall meeting. We were told that there's a blocking agent at Barton Pond, our drinking water source for Ann Arbor. That's not true, according to Larry Lemke. And he did not describe a preferred flow into Barton, which Larry Lemke also described to us. We don't see any testing at the bedrock at the core as well, where we have a feeling that there's high concentrations there. There's been 2 million part per billion contaminated soils at the core of the site. It's been ignored, and we've been told by DEQ that will get cleaned up after the groundwater is cleaned up, when it's obviously recontaminating the groundwater. Vapor intrusion exposures were not seriously considered until CARD pressured the DEQ and EGLE to look into vapor intrusion, and they're doing that, but it still got issues. Still not clear what EGLE's position is on Dr. Robert Bailey's vapor intrusion analysis, which came back with 100 part per billion action level proposal versus EGLE's much higher value. We've had many years of MS4 violations in the Allens Creek with 1,4-dioxane. This has not been addressed. DEQ went to court with Gelman and lasted decades, unfortunately. Larry Lemke, the consultant working for the CJ effort, seems conflicted. He stated to CARD, like I said, in recent years that in his opinion, there was no blocking agent at Barton, contrary to DEQ's comments. In fact, he said there's a preferred flow into Barton down an Old Creek flow area past M14. Now he's reversed his positions on those things, and I have to question why. He has no comment on the vapor intrusion issues, no comments on the very high soil concentrations.
1 minute.
I think the leadership in our city call is lacking as well. Surprisingly and alarmingly, Mayor Taylor was uninformed about the high near surface or shallow groundwater contamination 6 months after it occurred. When I talked to him at the Ann Arbor Green Fair with Administrator Lazarus with him, I find that very concerning. I think Mayor Taylor should recuse himself from voting on this. His partner in a law firm who's making hundreds of thousands of dollars on a ill-conceived CJ effort. Mayor Taylor's minority on City Council were forced by the majority on City Council to have a working session with CARD to do a presentation with reasons to support a EPA Superfund.
Okay, sir, that's 3 minutes. If you can wrap it up, please.
Yep, so I don't support this CJ effort. I think we need to have a EPA Superfund. And I think that would be the most efficient and most effective way to clean this up. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, just to remind people that if you want to make a comment tonight, if you don't want to voice your comment, you can type your comment into the question box on your Zoom toolbar you have in front of you, and that'll be for the record. We will not be reading those. Also, you can raise your hand and we'll call on you to unmute you. If you're on the phone and you want to make a comment, you type *9 and we will see your hand raised that way, and we'll call your phone number. So it's *9 if you want to make a comment on the phone. Okay, so our next person that said they want to make comment is Michael Moran. Michael Moran, you are unmuted now.
Thank you. My name, as you indicated, is Michael Moran. I'm a trustee of Ann Arbor Charter Township. I want to agree with the comments made by Dan Bicknell and Vince Caruso. In particular, I find the changes in the eastern area to be really distressing. The third consent judgment, third version of the consent judgment, has as a major goal in the eastern area to prohibit eastward expansion of the dioxane plume beyond Maple Road. In this version, that is completely stricken, and what it's replaced by is an increased prohibition zone. Not only is the prohibition zone increased, but the way this document is drafted, it permits future increases of the size of the prohibition zone as the solution for the continuing spread of this pollution plume to the eastward area. And in fact, it can be done either unilaterally by Gelman or by EGLE. I find that particularly unhelpful to resolving this particular problem. As Dan Bicknell had indicated, while you do indicate that the groundwater surface water in-face will be reduced to 280, the mention in this presentation by Dan Hamel just said subject to, I forget what he said, subject to other provisions. The other provisions are those that Dan indicated, permitting a mixing zone for this groundwater surface water interface, which could allow much higher levels of pollution to be discharged into the river. There are far too few sentinel wells and extraction wells. And in terms of the area east of Maple Road, which is Ann Arbor Township and a portion of the city, there are essentially no additional sentinel wells in Ann Arbor Township or for the pollution plume heading toward Ann Arbor Township, and no additional extraction wells. So all we're left with is an expanded prohibition zone, ever expanding with no end in sight or no end in document to how far it can expand. Finally, the participants, the interveners, have to give up way too much to get this limited, very limited improvement in the situation. They have to waive all other future claims, known or unknown, for the pollution caused by Gelman. And in addition, the Scio Township, who, like Ann Arbor Township, had petitioned the EPA to take over this and list it on the Superfund site, would have to reject that and withdraw that request. This is way too much to give for this very little improvement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, next commenter call up is Roger Rail. Roger Rail, you're now unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Roger Rail. I'm chair of CARD and chair of Scio Residents for Safe Water, 501c3 nonprofit that's been watching over this for the community since 1995. I myself am starting my 28th year as an unpaid citizen volunteer watching over this Gelman site. And I agree with Dan Bicknell and Vince and Mike Moran that this proposal is not acceptable. My preliminary review of the proposal shows that only about 1/4 of the dozens of concerns that CARD has identified over the years will be met by this proposed settlement. Even the couple of good items in the proposal have some flaws. They're finally proposing to remediate the dioxane in and around the burn pit and ponds 1 and 2, former treatment ponds. But those fall short. The target areas do not even encompass the sample locations with the highest concentrations. The area that says it's supposed to include pond 1 and pond 2 basically only includes pond 1. The remediation areas for the hotspot heading toward Evergreen do not hit where the highest concentrations are found. The southwest area near the core is largely ignored, even though it has some of the highest readings moving off the original Gelman site. The very long timeline needed for controlling the site was not addressed. Larry Lemke, in a previous presentation to CARD, said that in his studies with his students, the time it takes dioxane to travel east from Wagner Road, the average time was 74 years to 351 years. Larry did not bother to include these in his video summaries. Local government should not have to give up their future decision-making in order to get this limited cooperation from the polluter. The local governments and the state government have to work together to protect our waters of the state from Gelman's dioxane. We can't even get data and analyses that support these proposals that were in this settlement proposal. And that by itself should be enough to reject it. There are special interests in and around the city who would like to sweep this under the rug, but they're going to need a bigger rug. Thank you for this time.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, moving on to the next person. I have my list here. Alexander Weinstein. You're now unmuted, so go ahead.
Great, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Alexander Weinstein. I'm a resident at 523 Lakeview. I agree with all of the comments made that this proposal is not acceptable. I'm particularly worried about the well that's proposed at Park Lake and the idea that it would be expelling into the Sisters Lake area. I think that is unbelievably unacceptable. As a new homeowner, I've lived here now for 2 years in the area. I've been very thankful that we get zero dioxane in our waters, in our lake. I live on a well. This would, by design, introduce pollutants directly into the lake, First Sister Lake and Second Sister Lake, as well as a number of other problems of overflow and flooding. So I ask that to be struck. I reject that. I also reject the proposed settlement that suggests that there would no longer be any wait for legal action against future problems that were caused by the polluter. And so in all of these ways, I feel like this is a really horrible settlement and a step backwards rather than a step forward. Again, as far as our natural environment goes and the lakes here, there are children that swim in these lakes. There are a lot of people that would be affected very negatively. And I ask that you ensure the safety and the environmental responsibility and hold the polluter much more responsible than this settlement would do. Once again, I reject this and I urge you to reject this settlement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, I'm looking at, got one more person with their hand up. Just want to remind people that if you would like to make a comment, you can type it into the question box that you have in front of you. You click your raise hand icon on your Zoom toolbar, and that'll raise your hand to make a comment. If you're on the phone, you can type in *9 and you can make your comment. All right, so next person on my list with their hand up is Beth Collins. So Beth, you are unmuted on our end.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting this too. My name is Beth Collins. I'm the secretary of the CARD group, and I'm a resident in Ann Arbor that lives right next to First Sister Lake. While there may be some good portions of this CJ, like cleaning it up at the core, which should have been done years ago, the settlement agreement is just asking for way too much for the interveners to have to sign away the future, like previous callers have stated. But what's very concerning to me is the thought of this discharge into the First Sister Lake, which will be discharging, you'll be giving an NPDES permit to let them put dioxane and bromate into a standing body of water. It doesn't run like Honey Creek does of the Huron River. And the amount of 200 gallons per minute, which equates to about a 100-year storm event each day, or approximately 5 inches of rainwater in a 24-hour period. I've been asking since this came out for 2 weeks now to numerous parties where the data is, where the studies are, and where is the science behind this plan. Dolph Nature Area is a protected preserve in the city of Ann Arbor, Nature Area Preserve. It is also an EGLE wetlands and a federal wetland that are supposed to be protected. Why would you be doing this to damage our wetlands? Their wetlands provide carbon sequestration, which should be even more important now with all the climate problems we're having. It's also a habitat to all this wildlife in this area. And it can be converted into a lesser quality wetland if allowed to have even partial amounts of this water discharged daily. So I have a lot of questions. I've already submitted them in writing. So I would hope that you would please pass these along as to the science behind this plan. My husband had the movie Armageddon on the other day, and when Billy Bob Thornton is asked, is this your plan? This is your plan to save the world, NASA? Like, I just am baffled that this is your plan, to pollute a non-detect lake and to do a few more monitoring wells in the western side, to allow Allen Creek to become an NPDES permit, when clearly that shouldn't even have happened in the first place. We've been watching that happen now for 2 years. So anyway, a lot of us residents are really frustrated that I know some hands are tied because of previous consent judgments and weak environmental laws. However, think of the residents, think of the wildlife, think of our neighborhood that was forced off its wells due to the dioxane in the 90s. Thank you for your time.
All right, thank you. Okay, we've got another person with their hand up. Rita Locke Caruso. Rita Locke Caruso, you are now unmuted. So you can unmute the mic at your end.
Great, thank you very much. You did a great job pronouncing my name too. Yes, I'm a founding member of CARD. I'm also a professor of toxicology at the University of Michigan. This is a very complex document. It's 70 pages of legalese and it's got 12 appendices. It's been given to us with relatively little time, I think, to completely digest and understand. But my colleagues from CARD, the Coalition for Action and Remediation for Dioxane, have raised many of the most critical points that need to be given serious consideration. And I hope that that other people are listening to this webinar who maybe are not affiliated with CARD, who have not been following this situation so closely, and that you actually go to the website that's available to try to wade through some of these documents to get further information. And there's a website on a2gov.org that has, wait a minute, it's titled Gelman Proposed Settlement Documents, and it has all of these documents there. I do not support this. I have not read it in as much detail as I would like to, and I will before the end of the comment period, and I will provide some written comments that are more detailed. But in my discussions with my colleagues at CARD, I understand that there are too many outs in this document. There are too many ways in which Gelman is being allowed to abdicate its responsibilities for this cleanup, and that is my major concern. We should not be allowing them out clauses in which if they get this far, that's good enough. And we pick a number based upon the current science, when in fact we know that science is going to be advancing over the years. We may want to change criteria levels, for example, coming down the road. We may find out things about remediation and about toxicity as we move down the road towards cleaning this up. We should not allow in this consent judgment an absolute cutoff by which Gelman is allowed to be finished with their responsibility for this contamination. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I am not seeing anyone else with their hand up at the moment. I'm going to ask right now if anyone else would like to make a comment during this meeting for the record, and that has not commented already. So if you let us know by raising your hand or by typing something into the question box, and I see there are several people who have typed comments into there, so thank you for that. Just want to remind people up on the screen, I've got the other ways to submit comment if you didn't want to do it tonight. So you can do it by email or by mail. Okay, looks like another person has raised their hand. Jillian Carey. Jillian Carey, you're unmuted on our end.
Hello?
Yes.
Oh, hi. Jillian Carey. I'm a Scio Township resident. My question is, and I did type this in into the question and answer, why isn't EGLE making Danaher use the best technology, which they have through Trojan Technologies, to clean the water before dumping it into the uncontaminated First Sister Lake? According to the Danaher website, it does say, we ensure greater water confidence and environmental stewardship for people, industries, and municipalities, improving the lives of over 1 billion people globally. This consent judgment does not uphold their mission, their purpose. By using the technology, from my understanding, the same technology that they have been using creates another byproduct, which is another contaminant. This doesn't make sense to me. It makes more sense to me that they would use their technology through Trojan. In fact, on the Trojan Technology website, the city of Tucson uses their technology to remove dioxane and other contaminants to a clean, pure level. Why isn't EGLE and the city of Ann Arbor, Scio Township Board, and anybody else involved, why are they not pushing for this system? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to hold it open for just a moment to see if anybody else who has not made a comment would like to make a comment. Okay, without seeing any hands raised, I'm going to now ask if anybody that has already made a comment would like to make another comment for another 3 minutes. So if there's anyone else who would like to be given another 3 minutes to make a comment, we still have a little bit of time left tonight, so I want to give that extra opportunity. Okay, we do have a couple hands raised. So Roger Rail. Roger Rail, looks like you're unmuted on our end, so you can go ahead.
Yeah, bear with me here. I have to switch screens.
Okay.
So people that are listening, if you want more information about this or links to all of the other stakeholder websites, you can go to www.srsw.org. That's the website for Scio Residents for Safe Water. This is just one of 3 or more public events to review this proposed Gelman settlement after 3+ years of secret negotiations. Now the public is expected to comment on this overly complicated set of documents in a very short time frame without benefit of data analysis that supports the details of the proposal. There are some good things about it, but the devil is in the details, and a lot of the details are missing. So I encourage people to dig around in the documents that are supplied and to keep tabs on our posts as we post them to SRSW and CARD to see the details that are left off about this settlement. Because this is the same old that we've been dealing with for all these decades. And it's time to get a proper cleanup. As Dan Bicknell says, the EPA route is the way to go. It's the only entity with the enforcement capability to make a multi-billion-dollar recalcitrant polluter to do the right thing, even when the right thing will support their own business. Here we have a site that's not going to go away in any of our lifetimes, and they should be using it to perfect their technologies, their treatment technologies, their filtering technology. And instead, they're trying to get away with whatever they can get away with. And so far, they've been able to roll over the local governments and the state in court.
1 minute.
And keep a lot of what they're doing here secret. As I said before, we've seen from aerial photographs that there was some work done in the last half dozen years, more recently than that even, that have not been made public. We need to know everything there is to know about Danaher's dioxane in our waters of the state. And please please reject this proposal and get on with the proper cleanup. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Vince Caruso. Vince Caruso, your mic's unmuted.
Thanks again for the opportunity. I'd like to continue by talking about the city of Ann Arbor. They have a $4,000 basement vapor intrusion evaluation going on right now. I'm not sure why they're doing what they're doing because it's not appropriate. It's too far to the west. They did not come to CARD to get advice. I'm sure we would have given them much better advice on how to do that. Like I said before, there's an MS4 violation in the Allen's Creek. It's not being addressed by the city, nor by the EGLE. The majority in the state government currently are pushing for polluter pay legislation. I think that that's the way the state of Michigan needs to go. It's what we had in the past before John Engler. And I think that most people in Ann Arbor would support a polluter pay. I think Gelman and Danaher have, well, Danaher's a $140 billion company. I think they can pay for this cleanup. They own this pollution. Mitch Edelman has said the DEQ has said many times in public meetings that his opinion that Danaher is on the hook for this cleanup. And there's no question about that. I think basically having a 500 part per billion cleanup standard is a non-starter. 7.2 is what Michigan is proposing. 1 part per billion is what many states are using for a drinking water standard. The Environmental Working Group is proposing 0.35 part per billion. 500 part per billion could migrate into homeowners' drinking water wells to the north and west. Homeowner wells in the north in Ann Arbor Township clearly have no protection from this contamination from the maps that they've presented. 100 part per billion action level for basement exposures, Dr. Robert Bailey's vapor intrusion analysis is not being addressed and really needs to be evaluated in light of a 500 part per billion standard. These aquifers are connected and will crosstalk and will equilibrate over time and potentially cause shallow groundwater exposures to homeowners and businesses. There's no discussion of vapor intrusion with these migrating plume. significant hard work by the CARD group over the last 35 years will give EPA a real head start on a cleanup. EPA scored this site for potential Superfund evaluation with a very high Superfund listing and score with minimal evaluation. It wasn't even a full evaluation. In this case, we have a responsible party that EPA will require to do and pay the cleanup, as is happening now on other sites all over the country. Superfund is the most prudent path for Gelman full cleanup. This is a comment from Dan Bicknell. The main US EPA Superfund site benefits based on similar sites. There's active remediation. There's extended municipal drinking water supplies if needed. It halts the expansion. We have active remediation. We have Gelman paying for the site cleanup.
Okay, sir, it's 3 minutes.
We will require the Gelman to monitor as well. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Sorry, my mic was muted. We're going to go next to Michael Moran. Your mic is unmuted.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to leave this final thought. Instead of presenting a plan with measures for an improved cleanup of this dioxane plume, essentially what the Fourth Amendment consent judgment does is outline an exit strategy for Gelman. That's really unfortunate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next person, Mazgan Savas-Bahani.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, your mic's unmuted now.
Thank you very much. With all due respect for everybody who's speaking tonight, but they keep putting their hopes on the EPA. I know they were all at the meeting of January 2020, 17th, 2020, where the representative of the Environmental Protection Agency, Joanne Tanaka, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's Region 5 Acting Superfund Deputy Director, told us in no uncertain terms that even if EPA decides, after years of studying the site, even if they decide they want to clean it up, it will take decades to do it. And she was very clear about the fact that it is a very unlikely event that the EPA would actually consider doing it. We also have to be clear and not dilute ourselves when we talk about the EPA today. For 30 some odd years, when the EPA was a much stronger organization, was a much better advocate for public health, you have not been able to get them to clean this mess up. Now, at the time when there is no money in Superfund business, when the EPA of today has absolutely no teeth to do anything, now it is the time you want to force the polluter to the EPA to clean it up. It is really nice to think that you can force the polluter to clean it up. But in actuality, what you're saying is let the status quo continue. And as you can see, it is a deadly, deadly option to let it be as it is. The EPA is not going to clean it up. Gelman is not going to clean it up. The only people who would clean it up is us, those of us who will be drinking the dioxin. We must stop dragging our feet. We must get active and we must clean it up ourselves. I am fed up to see all this bickering over something that can be cleaned up. We can clean it up. There is no trust in people who have dragged us for decades and done nothing. The only thing they have done is to protect Gelman and not let them do what they are supposed to do. Ms. Tanaka told us it could take decades to even do a feasibility study. Everybody remember that? And after that, EPA may not clean the toxic dump. Everybody remember that? Do not put all your hopes on EPA cleanup. It's not gonna happen. You know it, I know it, the world knows it. Let us clean it up ourselves. Enough dragging our feet. You are responsible to clean this earth which you have polluted. This is the legacy of years and years of capitalist destruction of the planet for the few who will benefit from it, while letting millions of people drink the junk that they've been releasing to fill their pockets. The millionaires of this town are happy. The rest of us who have to drink the toxic stuff, we aren't. And the EPA, which is the darling of
That's 3
some,
minutes.
is just a terrible organization that has no regards for human health, and they have shown it to us.
Thank you. Okay, another person's got their hand up. Kathy Knoll. Kathy Knoll, if you since I think it's your first time commenting, if you could please repeat your name and any organization you're with.
Okay, can you hear me?
Barely, you might want to speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'm gonna raise my volume. Can you
Okay.
hear me now?
I think it's the same, so I don't know if you make it closer to your microphone or
Okay.
turn your microphone up.
Okay. My name is Kathy Knoll. I am a trustee in Scio Township. Under the current NPDES permitting process, EGLE is charged with establishing allowable discharge levels of pollutants. For example, into Honey Creek in Scio Township, and now here we're hearing about the new proposed discharge of pollutants into the First Sister Lake. These proposed settlement documents require that the parties agree to the old discharge limits when the allowable dioxane level was 85. Now it is 7.2. This provision has no place here. EGLE needs to do its job, review the discharge application, step up to the plate, protect the public health of our residents. Don't allow for this document to preempt what EGLE should be doing in the first place. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, everybody. That looks like all the hands that were up. I want to remind everybody about the various ways to submit comment. For those on the phone, just to remind you, you can submit it via, in addition to tonight, you can also submit it via email at EGLE, EGLE RRD, EGLE-RRD-Gelman, GELMAN @michigan.gov if you want to submit it via email. And just, I don't know if I misspoke or not earlier, but public comments will be collected until September 21st, 2020. Again, public comments will be collected until September 21st, 2020. I want to make sure that's clear. With that, I'm going to turn over to Dan Hamel. Back to Dan. I think you had some closing remarks you wanted to make. Dan, you there? Okay. You might have to unmute your mic if you're trying to talk to us. All right. Did anybody else on the EGLE team here, either Dan or Mike, did you want to make any more comments?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we could.
Okay.
Yes, Dan, we can hear you now. Okay.
I had some computer problems here,
Okay.
so I apologize.
Okay.
In closing, again, thank you for participating in the Gelman site public meeting. Tonight's presentation was a summary of the remediation and response activities identified in the CJ. We ask you to please review the entire CJ document, which can be found on the EGLE webpage, Gelman Sciences Inc. Site of Contamination Information page. Please submit any questions, as stated previously, please submit any questions or comments about the CJ to the EGLE RRD Gelman email address or by mail to me at the Jackson District Office by September 21st. Thank you for coming and participating, and good night, and please stay safe.
Okay, thanks, Dan. And thank you everyone who joined us tonight. For those of you who made comments on air and all those people that did make comments through the question box, we did receive your comments here, and they will be part of the record for those of you that typed those in. Up on the screen again is the email and the mail-in address as well. I want to thank you all for joining us. And oh yeah, I want to remind you too that we did record this, and we will be posting it on the Gelman website as soon as we can. So be on the lookout for that. Thank you all for joining us tonight, and have a great rest of your evening. Thank you.